This is the Refuge Project.
This is the Refuge Project, and we're back. We missed another week. We said we was going to be like on top of it this year, and then the city froze.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I was like, why did we?
Yeah.
I was going to blame it on you, whatever it was.
It got down to 30 degrees, so we decided to shut the city down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we roll, you know, in this beautiful tropical city that we live in, Houston, Texas.
Is that what you call our climate? What is it?
Hot and wet.
It's there's a word for it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's tropical.
Humid is the word.
It is humid.
Very humid. And then we don't do cold.
No. Like cold.
Well, as a city, we don't do cold. Nothing's set up for it.
My cousin lives in Nebraska. They get down like -30.
Yeah, but their
And they just,
infrastructure is made for that.
They just call the school in an hour late. Cut the roads with with their cars.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to have people like throwing salt on the street. They're going to have snow plows taking care of it. We got nothing.
We live in Mount Bellevue. Everybody lives within a mile of the school.
Oh yeah.
And
still shut it.
They shut it down.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Hey. I'll take it.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, so that's why you didn't get your second half of your podcast last week.
Had a bunch of roads shut down.
But we got to, the man in the building
that's
again
right.
today.
Where's my class?
Pastor Ron.
There it is.
He is back. He didn't freeze.
He didn't freeze.
He is back. But, so we all made it through. No busted pipes anywhere?
No busted pipes.
No busted pipe. That's good.
Thank God.
Yeah.
No more.
Well, I had another situation, but I
That's
won't
true.
go into all of that.
He did have some busted pipes, not freeze related.
Not because they froze.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that's another whole story.
Okay, so we're going to just jump right in because, hey, listen, lunch is important around here.
That's
what I mean?
Exactly right.
And we have timelines and wives waiting on us. So
My
we have
wife
to.
will be in the parking lot in 1 hour, so we're going to have to
We'll do it. Let's
get
go.
this thing accomplished.
So 2 weeks ago, we started talking about church growth and what it takes for church growth, or what Pastor Ron did for church growth, growing our church from around 50 people up until its highest, probably 700-ish, something like that.
Yeah, on a regular basis, yeah.
On a regular basis. And we had, of course, we had the, certain events that we had that would bring in 1,500 or whatever, 1,000, whatever it may be, consistently at times. So he knows a little bit of things. He's been around a while. So that's kind of where we went. And then we stopped off, and you had 5 things that you want. If you didn't hear this, go back one episode and catch the first one, and then come back to this one.
Yeah.
And then I think you had 5 things that you wanted to talk about before we close this thing out.
Well, I don't know if we talked about this or not last time, but, most churches in America are 100 people or less.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, thank God for all the churches and things, but people say, boy, I want to grow. Well, there's certain things you have to do if a church is going to grow. First of all, if a church will seat 100 people, let's say, you get 80 people there, it's full. You're not going to have 100 people in a sanctuary that seats 100 people. 80 people in that sanctuary be full.
Yeah, because everybody doesn't bathe well.
I mean,
so you don't want to be stacked on top of each other.
Sit shoulder to shoulder and thing. Now, at a special event, it might, but on a regular basis, it won't. Yeah. And people might not realize it, but it's not just the size of the sanctuary; it's the size of the parking lot.
Right.
The same thing is there. If the parking lot is 80% full, it's full. So you might say that you want your church to grow, but if you're 80% full, you're going to have to do something to make it grow. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we did years ago was we went to 2 services, and that helped because you've got the same facilities, but if you use it twice, you can get, supposedly twice as many people in there. So, you got to first of all want to grow. You got to feel like God wants you to grow. If you're living in a place where you're just happy with the people you have, and then there's nothing wrong with that. People need a church that they can go to and have the fellowship and hear the word and all of those things.
Can the pastor want it to grow by himself?
Well, he's got to set the tone.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. If the pastor doesn't want to grow, the church is not going to grow. If he's not willing to do the things that you have to do to have a bigger church, then the church is not going to grow. I remember our church, like you said, it started with about 50 when I was here. Of course, the church had lost a lot of people. I mean, at one time, it was at least 150, maybe 200 people, but a lot of them had left and so forth and so on. So when I became the pastor, I felt like God really had told me the church was to grow, give me a vision of a church that was a lot larger than what we had. And the church did start to grow, and we had about 150 people coming, and that included the children's church and the nursery and everybody, but it was full. The facility we had was full. So I decided we wanted to grow. How are we going to do it? So we went to 2 services, and we actually grew to a couple of 250. Now we're full in 2 services. And God was moving, and people were excited about coming to church and so forth. But let me say one more thing about church growth. For every 100 people you have in the church, you got to have a full-time staff person. One pastor can only be effective with about 100 members in the church. If he wants more people, he's got to get some more staff people. And you have to have leaders in the church. For every pastor, you need about 15 to 20 leaders. Mm-hmm. So if you have 100 people coming to your church, then you need about 15 to 20 people in leadership in the church. And I'm talking about you're going to have a worship leader. You're going to have somebody taking care of the nursery. You're going to have ushers. You're going to have, and each one of those leaders are going to have to have people on their team to help. So that's something important to understand. You can pray for a lot of people, but you're not going to do it by yourself. You got to have help. It's kind of like Moses, and Moses was trying to do it all himself, and God said, you can't do it all yourself. You're going to have to appoint some people to help you. Yeah. So let's just say, I believe God wants us to have a church of 1,000. Well, if you're going to have a church of 1,000, or you're going to have an auditorium that'll seat 1,000, and you're going to have a staff of 10, 15 people. You're going to have all sorts of people in leadership.
Let me ask you a question. How do you balance that out? Like, you don't have the people yet, but you need the people. You need to hire, but you don't have the money until you have the people. How do you kind of balance that out?
Only God can help you do that. In my case, I felt like you have to have something, a quality ministry in each age group. I call it something of excellence. Mm. And we had a little saying that we put on all the correspondence that we had, a family-oriented church. Because I felt like if a person, new couple coming to our church, if they had babies, well, they're going to look for the nursery.
Yeah.
If they had children in elementary school, they're going to look for the children's church. If they have young people, they're going to look for, a youth group. It's just the way it is. And that's hard. That's hard to get started.
Yeah.
Because if you only have 50 people in your church to start with, how are you going to have a big youth group and a big children's church and all of that? But you have to start.
Right.
You have to start. So you start with volunteers, and as soon as you can put a person on the payroll, it doesn't matter if you just pay them $100 a month or something, but they feel like I'm part of the staff here. Yeah. And that's exactly what we did. First of all, we had a secretary. You got to have a secretary, and then we had a lady volunteered to be the children's pastor. Well, before that, we didn't have a nursery worker. All the mamas just went to the nursery and sat there during the service. But as soon as you can, you start getting somebody on the payroll that will do that. And then people come, well, we have something for children. We have something for young people and so forth. But church growth is not automatic. There's things you have to do. If you have 100 and you want to have 200, you got to make some changes.
Yeah.
And you have to have a plan to grow, and you have to have volunteers that'll do the work that's necessary for growth. And you got to be willing to change. And the structure you have for 100 won't work for 200 or 300. It takes a lot. I found this out. It takes a lot of new people just to maintain the attendance that you have.
Yeah. Would you say a 30% turnover every 3 years?
I think it was every year.
I think it's probably more than that.
Wow.
But at least that. Let's say if you had 100 people in your church, you'd have to have 30 new members every year to just maintain 100. The 100.
Wow.
In my experience, that's
so 30% a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on. My throat is.
He's running around the room, coughing all over the place. He's trying.
So, anyway, we got to about 250 people, and we weren't going to grow anymore. We didn't have parking space for any more than that, or building space for any more than that. And I got to praying, God, we want to have 500 people in our church. And I remember God says, well, wait a minute, you can't handle 500 people. You don't have the room for 500 people. You're going to have to build a bigger building and all of that stuff. You're going to have more money. I got to thinking about it. If somebody were to give me a big building, back then Lakewood was, well, of course Lakewood is the biggest church in America now, but back then it was the biggest church around. And I just got to thinking, if they would give me that building, I couldn't support it.
Right.
Just the light bill would be more than money that's coming in tithe in our church. So you can't just say, I need a big building. And by the way, just a big building will not automatically make your church grow. It just won't. So you have to start with what you have. My philosophy was always, if we could fill the church up twice on Sunday morning, then it would be, the people would get excited about giving to build a bigger building. And that's pretty much what happened at our church. We filled it up twice. We started a building fund, and people were willing to give. It was amazing. If people don't see a need to give, they're probably not going to give. So, well, we don't need a bigger church. We ain't fill this one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So, I started doing all sorts of things, trying to raise some money to build a new church. I remember going over to Sagemont Church. Dr. John Morgan was the pastor over there, and boy, that guy knew how to raise money. And he told me about something they did about giving everybody $1 and telling them to try to multiply it, like, the story of the talents in the Bible. Well, my wife and I decided we'd give everybody $5 because for $1 it didn't go very far, but it still don't. But anyway, we gave everybody that was willing to participate in this thing. We gave everybody $5, and it was amazing what people did to try to multiply all of that. But you talked about that list of things that I said you don't have to deal with to cause a church to grow. Let me give you that list. First of all, I said it takes money. It takes money. You got to have people that are willing to buy into that vision that you have, and it takes money. We hosted a lot of special events and so forth. It takes money to host those special events. Takes money to hire staff members. Takes money to have a good youth program, good children's program. One of the things we started way back before we built this building was we started a pastor's convocation. And that takes money because we decided we'd pay for their hotel room. Well, back then, I went down here to the Roadway Inn, and they said they'd give us the rooms for $25 a night. Now, you tell that's 35 years ago.
Yeah.
$25 a night. So I got to think, well, we don't have $25 a night. And you got to understand, we're still in the little building, and so I decided, well, let's see if we could get people to sponsor a missionary, a pastor, and that'd be $100. So if you sponsored a pastor and you gave $100, we could pay for their motel room for 4 nights. Well, that kind of breaks it down. People say, well, I think I can come up with $100. And so that first year, we had, 8, 10 pastors that came. That was it. But we had that many people sponsor it. So God got a way to provide what you need if people are willing to do it. And that has grown through the years. Some years we've had as many as 300 guests here.
Yeah.
People sponsoring them and so forth. But it takes money, and you got to feel like I've always said if God leads you to do something and you know it's God, He's going to provide for it.
Right.
He's going to provide for it. But you gotta give people a way to do it, and that's the way we did on the convocation. One year, the expenses for the convocation was over $60,000.
Wow.
But the money came in. I remember one year we didn't have all the money, and I was worried about it. And that was that miracle offering we had that time.
People taking off rings and jewelry and all kinds of stuff.
One of the guys that was here pastored a little bitty church up somewhere in East Texas. He said, God wouldn't let me sleep last night. And he told me that we were to take an offering, and if you gave him that offering, he was going to bless you and so forth. And I'm telling you, I think $20,000-$30,000 came in that offering, which was just amazing.
I wrote 3 checks that night.
You did, yeah.
I did. And we didn't have the money. I wrote our rent check.
It just, if God is doing it, I mean,
Well,
you couldn't do that. Oh, if God wasn't in that, you'd never.
Yeah,
Never
Sandra and I were young and married, and she was just like, we don't have the money. I said, God was telling me, and she said, I hope it's God. And we never missed the bill. You know,
I know that's true. I did the same thing. I gave everything I had in my billfold, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was a whole lot to me. And then I went and got my checkbook. But you know, and God was faithful. I never heard anybody say, "Well, I shouldn't have done that."
right?
Yeah.
Everybody said, you know, it was just a miracle, and God blessed me for doing it. But it takes money, and if you're going to grow, it's just like when we came from the little church across the street into this building. I mean, the light bill was 3 times as much, and everything else. I mean, you have to have somebody, custodian, a building superintendent, we'd call it. You've got to have all of those things if you're going to grow. You say, well, where's that money come from? We got to have more people. You got to have more people. So you got to have money for growth, and it takes a willingness to change in order to grow. Famous last words are, "We've never done it that way before." And you know, the old saying is, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And that's what happens to most churches. They don't want to change. It's a different structure if you're going to have more people. And also, what worked 20 years ago won't necessarily work today. I could tell you what we did, but it might not work today. I mean, society changes. Young people change. Boy, do I know that. I mean, you just showed me a little bitty thing that you're recording this session on. I can't believe it. Yeah. It's smaller than a dime.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, you've got to change, you know, the methods that you use, but methods
and strategies will always change, but the word will stay the same.
The message has to be the same.
Yeah.
The message has to be the same. But, you know, there has to be change, and change is difficult, especially for old people.
Right.
Music has to change. Boy, that's hard for me. Oh, my God. I like the old hymns. I like the old. But young people, shoot. They wouldn't want to listen to the music I love.
What was your cousin or cousin-in-law that preached the message about the blood of the lamb and the snake?
Oh yeah.
What's his name?
Rex Johnson.
Rex Johnson. I remember him. The Lord just getting all over him one day. He's sitting there getting ready to preach, and he's in his mind he's complaining about the worship and all this music, and then God told him to turn around, and he turned around, and his whole church is crying and worshiping, and he was just like, "Forgive me, Lord. It's not just about it's not about me. So
that is absolutely true. But let me tell you how I feel. I'm glad what we're doing here at our church right now is we're having kind of like a traditional service.
Yeah.
Where we sing some of the older choruses, and we always sing a hymn and things. And for me, that's worship. I mean, I can really worship that way. And I think people, of course, now I say in my age, my God, there's nobody my age anymore. I'm the oldest guy in the church except for my brother. But older people, let's put it that way. I think they enjoy songs that they know,
for sure.
They understand. Yeah. But I also understand that, you're going to have newer music.
And I think that's important when we talk about church growth, is that you have to move forward, but you can't leave behind.
Yeah.
And you can't leave behind the cornerstones. And that's what that older crowd is. They are the cornerstones of the church. And you have to move forward, but you can't leave behind.
You need everybody.
Yeah.
You really need everybody. Older people, let's just face it, most they're the ones that give a lot of money to
Right.
support things. The younger people have to teach them to do that too, because that's a blessing to give. But we need everybody. You can't just say, well, them old folks, we don't need them. So I think what we're doing is a good thing to do, because we have an early service where we sing songs that us older folks like to sing and really worship. I don't think young people understand that, you can't worship singing songs you don't know and things like that. I want to worship, and I love those songs that and that's not to say some of the new songs are not good, and I learned.
But that's the ones they know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the ones they're listening to on the radio and that type of thing. So it works both ways.
It's all important.
Yeah.
But I also, just in my humble opinion, I think even in the contemporary service, you ought to sing a few choruses that are more familiar. Don't try to sing new ones every week,
Yeah.
But it's just that you got to be willing to change if you're going to grow. Okay. And then if you're going to grow, it takes work. It takes hard work. You're going to have to make a commitment for growth. And that involves sacrifice. It means continue to grow when things get tough. It's kind of easy to start something, but it's not too easy to see it through.
Yeah.
I was talking about my son-in-law the other day in the leadership meeting. My son-in-law, his name is Greg. He's married to my daughter, Renee. They moved to Centerville years and years ago. They didn't have a church there. They started a little church in a storefront there on the square, Centerville. The church began to grow, and they needed to build a building. My son-in-law's a builder. So he decided, well, let's just build it. We can build it ourselves. I'll kind of be the foreman of the job. So when they started, they had a whole bunch of volunteers. Well, help you, boy. We'll be there every Saturday and Sunday and weekday that we can come. And it went real well for a while, and then people started dropping out when it started taking a year and more than a year. And finally, it was just a handful of guys that was trying to finish the job. But that's kind of the way it is with anything you start. Just try to have a work day around here, and maybe the first week they can do it, but if you need to do it several weeks in a row, a lot of people will drop out. So that takes a commitment. If you're going to grow, it takes a commitment. And, we're talking about what it takes for church growth. That's just the way it is. We try to do a lot of the work around here ourselves when we build this building. A lot of people didn't know what they were doing. I got some pictures with me up trying to put up sheetrock and tape and float it, I didn't know what I was doing. Then we got we had a ministry for drug addicts, and we got them. They hired them to put up the sheetrock and stuff. My goodness, you talk about a mess. It was finally
Drug addicts doing sheetrock.
You're telling me drug addicts aren't good at drywall?
They can't even stay dry themselves.
Oh, wait. That went hand in hand.
Oh, my goodness. It was a mess. And finally, we decided, well, that's one thing we're going to have to hire somebody that knows what they're doing.
It's a skill. Same
thing with the painting. But anyway, I've never seen so much mud, I mean, we got it by the truckloads to try to fill in all the cracks, cover up all the things that we did wrong. But hey, we did a lot of things right too, and it was fun really because you just feel like take ownership of the building. You know, I look around here and see a lot of things that I did and all of us did together. I remember my mama. We put in a lot of fluorescent lights.
You didn't try to kill her with these lights, did you?
Put in a lot of fluorescent lights, and we found some in some building they were tearing down downtown. I mean, a truckload of those things, but they had rusty, and some of the balances needed to be changed. Anyway, I put my mama in charge of that, and she was refurbishing all of those old lights. They're still in our sanctuary. We never hardly use them anymore, but they're all up there. But everybody had a job to do, and it was I could tell you all those stories. But for the people that were involved in that, I feel like boy, this is my church. I did this. I remember trying to get the money. As a matter of fact, I think we talked about that last time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. If you don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, it don't matter much. But we sold bonds, church bonds. I didn't know anything about church bonds. The bank wouldn't lend us any money. And so I heard somebody talking about church bonds, and I ended up contacting a church bond company, and they sent a fellow out here to talk to me about it, and it sounded good to me, and I couldn't, I just couldn't believe people. We needed $1 million, and he said, "Boy, you're gonna have to have a big banquet and invite the whole community in and tell them what the bonds you have, and try to sell them." And I thought, well, that's what we'll have to do. But I'm telling you, we sold all those bonds on a Wednesday night. There were people in our church, old ladies, retired people. And back then, a bank wouldn't pay in any kind of interest. And the bonds, we started 6% and went to 9%.
6% is good.
Wow.
And people...
It's a guarantee.
People came, and they wanted these bonds. And I mean, I remember
I want
couple
one of those bonds.
couple of ladies. One lady bought $150,000 worth of church bonds.
Yeah,
I would have too.
Yeah,
another lady bought
Guaranteed
100,000. Well, I never. Anybody got $100,000? Most I ever had was $10,000 in the bank. But that's exactly what happened. It was amazing.
Wow.
And we sold all those bonds, and I made a commitment. I said, "Well, I'm going to be here until we pay all these people." Oh, that's their life savings they were putting in the church bonds, and of course, other people were buying smaller amounts. But it was amazing what God did with the church bond. I don't know. It takes time for growth. You can't do it just overnight. You have to do all these things to make the church grow. Not gonna happen. And just to sustain it, even right now, we've gone through a season with this COVID. A lot of people dropping out of church, finances go down, and just to sustain things, it takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of growth, and it has to be people have to understand that it takes tithers to sustain a church. I don't care who you are. That's God's plan. God's plan is for people to tithe. And it's a win-win situation because he promises if you'll give him the first 10%, he'll multiply the rest. I'm 82 years old. I started that when I was a kid. Remember the first time I gave my tithe, I had mowed my Aunt Daisy's 1 acre of land with a push mower.
Good Lord.
And she gave me $5.
Bet your kids
$5. He said $5, y'all.
$5. That was a lot of money back then.
I bet your kids couldn't do that, David.
My
I
mama,
know. My kids don't even know what a lawnmower is.
I've heard about their lawn mowing skills.
my mama said,
I had $1 in gas, and he made
Yeah.
$4.
Gas didn't cost $1, man.
Yeah.
It cost about 20 cents
20
a
cents,
gallon. But anyway, my mama said 50 cents of that is your tithe.
Yeah.
Give that. And that was my first tithe, and I've been tithing ever since. And God's been faithful.
Yeah.
I mean, God's been faithful. So you got to have people that are willing to give. And I don't know what else to tell you about church growth, except, you got to have a vision. And you got to want to grow. Got to be willing to sacrifice to grow. People have to buy into it.
So when you talk about a vision,
Yeah.
how do you sell that to your people? We have these, campaigns that we go on, right? Do people get tired of hearing it? Do you hit it every week? Do you hit it once a month when you're in the middle of your campaigns? How do you put it out there without people going, "Oh, here he goes again"?
Yeah.
Or is it important just to talk about it every week?
Boy, you're asking me all these questions. I don't have the answer to all of that. I know it has to be God. If a church is growing and people are getting saved and people are excited about coming to church and things, you have a vision and you just say, hey, we need to do this and see it. And God will put it in the hearts of people to help you. If people are not willing to help you, then I don't know.
Yeah.
Did God call you, or did God want you to do that?
And this day and age is like, from the schools raising money, right?
Yeah.
And they're sending text messages out every week. Hey, don't forget about, the Eagles versus cancer and, raising this money. But the first time the church sends something out, they're like, oh my gosh, the church is asking for money again.
Yeah.
But you done gave, $100 and some to the school every week for something that they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
So, I think that we got to find a balance when the church asks for money, because there's so much other things that are in competition for money right now. Everybody's raising the money. Everybody has a 501c. Everybody, is trying to get a little bit of money out of your pocket.
Yeah.
So just to keep that vision aware, we got to find a balance to make sure it's staying at the top of our of our brain.
Yeah.
It's tough right now. It's tough on a lot of people, and we got to understand that. But at the same time, God makes a way. If you'll just say, Lord, I want to be a blessing here. I want to help this, and if you'll give me a way to do it. And it's amazing how God does that. If God's in the thing that you're trying to raise the money for.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I remember when we were trying to raise money to build a building here, and I didn't have any extra money, and I said, God, if you'll help me, just give me some extra jobs to work, or not here. That was at another. When I came as a pastor here, I quit all those other part-time jobs I had, and I had a bunch of them. But I remember here, I said, God, I will give if any extra money comes in. If people give me money for doing a wedding, I'll give you that. If people give me money for doing a funeral, I'll do that. If I get a chance to preach somewhere else and they give me an offering, I'll give you that. And it was amazing how much money that I was able to raise because God just opened those doors for me. And I've always believed that that's the way God works. When I was working, extra jobs, and I had 3 or 4 of them all the time, and I needed some extra money. If the church was trying to raise money and I felt like I needed to give, God would always open up an extra shift for me to work or do something where I could get extra money to give. You got to be willing to do that sort of thing. And I believe He'll do that for people. I remember, I might have said that last week. I don't remember, but there was a fella that worked at Reed Roller Bit with my daddy. Did I tell you about that? Maybe not. Maybe not. His name was George Smith, and he went to this church. He got saved in this church and so forth. But he was going to another church. He was a member of another church, and at that time I was the foreman at the Houston Chronicle on Saturday nights, and I was able to hire people to help with that. And I don't know, they made $50, $60 for working on Saturday night. I hired a bunch of kids from the school. But this was an older fella, and the church had started a building program, and he wanted to be able to give to the building program. And so he came to me and said, I hear you can hire people at the Chronicle to work on Saturday night. I said, yeah, if you want to do it, it's just hard work. It's just not. Yeah, he said, well, I want to do it because I made a pledge so much to the building program at my church, and I want to, that's the only way I know to get some extra money to do it. And he worked for me for about at least a year and a half or so, and all the money he made at the Chronicle, he gave to the building program.
Wow.
So God's able to do it if people are willing to do what has to be done.
See, that's one of the things that upsets me, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, or just I don't understand is like you see this next generation, and this next generation has a lot to fight with because, the TV shows us that we have to look a certain way, that we have to wear the certain clothes, and you have people that are wearing designer shoes that cost, at retail they're $150, and if you don't get them then they're $300. And then they turn around and say, well, I can't afford to give to the church.
Yeah.
Well, you mean you got, if you resold those tennis shoes right now, you get $450 for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying nothing bad about the tennis shoes because I wear them.
Yeah.
But I pay my tithes too. You know what I mean? Before I buy my tennis shoes. So I know that this next generation there's a lot to compete with. How do you talk to that next generation? And I know that the generation that you talked to had something else before than what we have. But is it just something that I know Brother Osteen. Senior, he talked about tithing for 360 days, a whole year. 52 weeks. That's what I was looking for.
I guess you just have to teach people what the Bible says, and if you believe it or not.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy for people to give 10% of what they're making when it takes everything they're making to pay the bills. It's just not easy. But I have found, and I think everybody else has found that God's word's true. If you do that, He'll make a way. And it's not always, man, that you have a lot of money. I'm telling you, we'll talk about my situation. God's blessed me abundantly. But
we've all been poor at one time or another.
But
some still are.
Even right now, we're trying to give to the convocation. This year it's $400 to support somebody, and $400 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
only way I can do it is if God helps me in that now, or I get something out of my savings, my retirement fund. I'm hesitant to do that.
Right.
But I don't have the money coming in right now where I can pay $400. I really don't. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm trusting God. And I know that He'll bless me for doing it. But it's not easy, is what I'm saying. And for young people, I know it's got to be really tough. It was tough for me to do that when I was growing up. Matter of fact, I remember one time, way back at Houston Gospel Tabernacle, I was leading the singing and stuff, and I just didn't have much money. Had a couple of little kids, not much money, and I was complaining about it. One of the old ladies come up to me after church. She gave me some money and said, "You buy." I said something about, "Boy, I got to buy my kids some milk," and she gave me some money and said, "You buy those little kids some milk." And God kind of, He convicted me about that. I could buy those kids some milk, but it's been tough. It's not always easy,
I remember when I was a kid, people delivering groceries to our doorstep,
Yeah.
So it's not always been easy. We talk about my truck being too big, but listen, I remember where I came from.
Yeah.
Hey, nobody gave it to you.
No.
You're working for it, and that's the way it's always been for me. I've been willing to work, but God's been good. Anyway.
James, you got any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Man, I must have done a good job.
You did. You went over all of it.
Yeah.
So
let me ask this question. And did y'all ever get in a position where, like, you had a goal, right? And then, expectations are not quite hitting that goal, and how do you maintain the excitement when, the excitement's kind of less than what's coming in,
I've been there a lot of times. A lot of times. God never gives you, I've found this out, He never gives you enough that you don't have to trust Him.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, you have to trust Him all the time. I mean, I've been here long enough to know that God always comes through. I remember years ago, we needed to refurbish the parking lot at the Children's Church and the youth building over there. And it was going to cost a little over $100,000 to do it. And we did not have $100,000. And so anyway, I just praying about it. God, we need to do this. We don't have the money. And one day, Lindy Hall, he used to be one of our elders here. I was in New York with Stacy. His kids was up there. I don't know how we were in New York, but I remember we were there. He used to take a choir up there to sing in New York. And I got a phone call from Lindy Hall and said, "Pastor, you're not going to believe this." Said, but a fella gave a tithe of $120,000 today. Man, you could hear me from New York shouting, God, that's fantastic. And he had been hurt in one of these refineries, a BP refinery out there, got hurt and got
fantastic.
They're going to fall off something.
Over $1 million, in compensation for that, and he gave his tithe. And it just showed me, God, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it. I mean, I don't know, but you did it. But the next week, we still needed everybody to give.
Right. Yeah.
Because it don't just come in like God's going to give me, we're going to win the lottery and we're going to have $1 billion and we won't have to worry about it anymore. That's not the way God works.
Yeah.
It's every week.
I used to get so frustrated because, I would get a little bit of money and then a bill would come in and be like, Yeah. But then I realized.
That's why you got the money.
That's why I got the God is giving me the money to take care of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought I was trying to get ahead, but God's just providing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what He does. And we got to be, wise about our money. We can't just blow it all the time. But God meets our needs, and then He gives us a little to. Also,
just some milk for our kids every once in a while too.
No, it's just amazing how God has blessed me. I've really been in a lot of different places in the world. I've been to Israel for 6 times, and God is just. Well, the first time I went with my cousin Jabo, and he had a deal. If a pastor would go, we could go for $300, and if your wife went, it was another $700. For $1,000, me and Janet went.
Now it's like 3,000
a piece.
Yeah,
at least. But I went to Israel, and the $1,000. I was at First Assembly there at that time, and I told those people, I had this opportunity to go, and they took an offering and gave us $1,000.
Wow!
So that's the way I went to Israel. And I didn't have the money to do that, but God just provided.
How did you play golf in Hawaii?
Well,
because golf in Hawaii is like $300.
That was another deal. I found out that the locals could go for about $50. But
he's like, "Hey, man!" With this,
Pretended he was from Jamaica. That's what he did.
That's been a long time ago, but I can't remember how I worked it out, but I got it worked out.
Yeah.
But God's just been so good to me. I mean, really, He has. Yeah. Most of the time when I went on I always went on vacations. Every summer I went on vacation. But, I'd have 3 months off from teaching school, and then I'd work somewhere for 2 months, and then I'd have the money to go on a vacation for a couple of weeks. Yeah. That's been one of the things that my family, we remember all those vacations.
It's important because, I have this young man that works for me, and he's never been out of his neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he doesn't understand what the rest of the world is doing or, his opportunities.
Yeah.
There's more opportunity for anybody outside their neighborhood, but if you never make that journey outside of your known area, you really don't know how big this world is and the opportunities that God has given us. So, I mean, it's so important because you do that now. James is able to, because his dad did it, and then he's able to travel around and know different areas and stuff. So
those are the things that you remember.
Yeah,
it's crazy how many places I've been.
Yeah.
I've talked about that with people before. Where I have friends and they're like, "Yeah, I've never been outside of the state or whatever." And they go, "You ever been outside of the state?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've been." I've been on how many continents have I've been on like 3 or 4 continents. I've been all over the place, and it's crazy. And I don't have a bunch of money. Nobody in my family has a bunch of money.
Exactly.
We just have.
But I'm going.
I'm going to Hawaii in 2 weeks. Yeah. Look out.
We just planned our Hawaii trip. Look at that. That's our Hawaii trip right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at those numbers.
How about
they
that?
They are big. Goodness gracious, I didn't know a Hawaii trip would cost so much.
We're going on a cruise to Alaska. I've been on a cruise to Alaska, I don't know, 6, 7 times. I just love that cruise. But I always looking at vacations to go, and they have things on there, 30% off, 50% off. They're sick. I found one here a few months ago, 92% off. Going to Alaska.
Does the room not have plumbing in it, or what's the deal?
It's a cruise without a boat.
Yeah,
92% off, and it's on Norwegian. That's one of
the one you like.
The top ones,
That's the older people.
And I thought, man, I'd like to go on that. And,
so was it really 92% off? With it just
the problem was that they jacked the price.
Yeah.
Up,
Jacked it up to $10,000
off of the $10,000 was the regular price.
That's so funny. I just
so
said
it was
that.
Still it was $1,000, but the regular price on any other cruise ship might be $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was still really a good deal, and but it was still $2,000 plus. Then you have to you have to get there, and so forth. So it's going to be about $3,000. And about that time, unexpectedly, the school, I get a little retirement check from the school since I worked there for 15 years. And unexpectedly, they send me a check for $6,000.
Hey,
back pay or something, something. I think all the old
recalculations.
Retired school teachers got it, but I didn't know I was getting anything,
Man.
And anyway, so I had the money to pay for the trip. And God just does things like that,
I'll say one
amazing.
thing I've gotten from this conversation is if you're trying to raise money for something, I think it's very helpful for the people to feel like they're getting something as opposed to just giving you money. So like when you just described your cruise there, you're getting 92% off. Exactly. It still costs you money, but you're feeling good because you got a deal.
Oh, I got a real deal.
When you start talking about the bonds, me and David said, hey, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
We have things like we have a bake sale or something. If you have some kind of fundraiser where the person's getting something, I think they're a lot more likely to give the money as opposed to just being like, hey, please give me some money for this.
The church bonds were really a blessing to us. But the bank wouldn't lend us any money.
Yeah.
But anyway, the church, but that had to be God too, because you're not going to give your money to a church that you don't think is going to be able to pay you back.
Right.
It has to be somebody you got trust in, and that's one of the things that I'm glad I was able to do is people believed in me. If I said we'll get it back to you, they believe Ron Nissen's going to come through with that. He's not going to. Leave in 5 years here.
Because I just looked at church bonds, like we were talking about a while ago, and it says, is church bonds a safe investment? And this says there's no guarantees to recover the entire investment.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're in good faith. You're given you're given an offering, and you might or might not get it back.
Yeah.
No, you got to be careful with your church bonds, but I could tell you all about that because I know all about it. But anyway, you got to make sure that the church is solid. Right, it's going to be able to pay you back.
It's not one of these new pop-up churches, and
somebody's be gone in a month.
Yeah.
But my thing was like, I'm a person given to the church. I'm excited about that 6%. Even if it's just a dumb bake sale or something. Like, hey, I like cookies. I'll take a cookie.
Take something. Yeah.
And, that's what this generation, your generation.
Yeah,
your generation, they want something for it.
Yeah.
My, back in our days when our kids would go to school, they would have that, penny a mile or a quarter a mile or whatever. You used to pledge to that, right?
Yeah.
Now you do that in school, and they're like, "Mijo, I'm not doing this. You need to go out there and do that for free."
Yeah.
But if you have like a winter, thing that you have all these games and different things, and you go buy tickets for. That same family will pay. I did the Mexican accent, but that's just because I'm not picking on Mexicans. That's what I would tell my kid. I'm sorry. They'll go spend $150 on tickets because the chance of them getting something back.
Right.
So we look at things a little bit different from the way we used to now. So if you could get a little cookie back, or you could get a point or two back on something, then you were more likely to give. So
my pawpaw's looking at his watch. He's got 2 minutes.
My wife
no, he ain't looking at his watch. He's showing
us his watch. No, he's right though. He got about a minute and a half.
Enchiladas are warm. I gotta go.
Do you know where you're going to lunch today, Pawpaw?
I'm probably going over to the El Policino.
Told you the enchiladas. I told you.
All right, well, let's wrap it up.
All right, we appreciate you coming in the last couple of weeks. I know this is a lot of good information for me and everybody out there listening, and we really value the things that you've been through and the words that you've given to us. So thank you. All right, cool. And we love you.
This is the Refuge Project.